WNST. Me now entering my 27th year of doing sports radio here in Baltimore and heading to my 25th Super Bowl later on in the month. You get to make friends all over the league, and as I said to everyone on Sunday night, I had three dear friends of mine fire within hours of each other, from Jack Del Rio to Chuck Pagano to Jim Caldwell after having dinner with Marvin Lewis on Saturday night. And people move places and they move on, and when they do well, you cheer for them. So I figure this is a great time for me to get on the horn with my dear friend Larry Rosen, who is a senior executive producer at Jacksonville Jaguars for all things big video boards and pools in the upper deck, but was the one-time senior producer of all things Rave TV here, and he is my friend. And you know what I just wanted to do, Rosen? I wanted to call you and say, you know what? How does it feel to have a playoff game this week? Tell me how that feels, because we don't feel that way right now. And I had it all set up. I was coming down to Jacksonville. You and I were going to hang out at the pool, the whole thing. And it all fell apart, right?
Yeah, it was a great scenario. I mean, we had some good time together in London, which as a Jaguar was kind of a peak moment. It's the first time you realized this team really can do something.
I don't know if this London thing you speak of, I have no recollection of.
I have no recollection. Yes, it was a weird exchange rate. But for the folks here, it's the first time this century they have a home playoff game. And coming out of Baltimore, where it was, a relatively annual experience, I feel kind of like a lot of people are leaning over and saying, what's this going to be like? What's that going to be like? You remind them the pace is going to be quicker. The intensity is going to be ratcheted up. The league's going to be watching more closely on, violations and this and that. But at the end of the day, it's a purebred sellout. They sold out as soon as the clinch was done. The field's being painted. We're gearing up.
It's a Georgia, Florida sellout. It's a real sellout, you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they took the tarps off, everything. So it'll look really, really pretty for a 1 o'clock Sunday. And, temperatures today are in the 30s. It kind of feels like football, I know we can't complain about it when you're single digits or whatever.
Well, you're a Philadelphia guy, dude. You're tough. There's a lot of transplants down there, but like in the 30s down there, that kind of freaks people out there. People don't have clothing for that down there, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. But it does feel like football, and it feels like January football, and it feels like playoff football. And there is a certain toughness about this club. There's a defensive mindset. There's a 240-pound Jamal Lewis lookalike at running back. The Baltimore people would see some familiar things if they felt the need to look closely, which of course we never would, because if it's not the Ravens, we don't care. But there's things that as a Raven that came up from a team that had never been to the playoffs to the first Super Bowl, there's some really legitimate comparisons that are kind of fun to look at.
Well, and we got the skid marks down our back. I mean, we saw you guys out in Wembley, Larry. But before I even get to your team and where you are, I know you keep great company. You still got a lot of friends in the building out in Owings Mills. You watch the game as closely as anybody watches the game. You had your own issues on Sunday in playing Tennessee and all that. But what happened to the Ravens on Sunday? My man, I mean, you work in the business. You've been in the building. You know the other side of Billy Cundiff and, everything else that can happen in this game. But 4th and 12 in that circumstance, with the stadium being 30,000 people not going to the games anymore, which I know you have a hard time sort of imagining where we are right now as a franchise, that this could happen. I know you're happy in Jacksonville and you're doing your thing or whatever, but it's a tough thing to be you in the Ravens building or anybody in the Ravens building, and certainly right now for the tenor of the organization, it's kind of a frightening, sort of a weird time in the Ravens' history right now. I've been chronicling it, but that loss was really, it sets off a dark tone around here or anywhere when that happens, man.
Well, that's pretty well said. When you're in the business, you care about your team and the team you're playing that week, and everybody else is just kind of part of the noise. So as much as I pay attention and deal with my peeps, and, my phone blew up all night, Sunday night, all my guys on the crew, the point that you made was the empty seats really does blow you apart. And while the handshake's going on post-game, I'm thrilled for Marvin, because he's one of the greatest people I've met in the business. We did shows together in the early 2000s when he was coordinating. So I'm thrilled for Marvin. And then you kind of look across and see all the people that I worked with for all those years, and the level of devastation. But, Dean Pease is one of the classiest, smartest, most understated, kind men that I worked with in all my years in the league. I wish him nothing but the very, very best. He told me when he told me in London that he figured that this was it, and he just remember thinking he'd like him to go out in a really cool way, like Ray, and if the last play that he ever calls a defensive call for is the 4th and 12, that's not a great way to go out, and he just feel for everybody. I always tell people the NFL is you're going 80 miles an hour until you hit the brick wall. And you hit the brick wall, and then you just, when it goes, it goes. When it ends, it ends. And
all I could think about on Sunday was the U2 song, So Cruel. You know what I mean? I mean, it is cruel. And it's cruel when everybody's getting fired on Black Monday. And even though they've had a gig 15 years, they made a lot of money and lived out some dreams and made more money and had a better life than any of them ever thought they were going to have. Certainly for a guy like Dean Pease at the end making a couple $1 million, right? Like, he never thought about that in 1982 when he was, grad assisting and trying to become these guys. And then there becomes all these openings, and John Gruden decides to sign up and come back for it. But John Gruden signed up and come back for it. You know why? Because the same reason you're down in Jacksonville and you took a job down there in a relatively empty stadium where things weren't great, and they have big visions and they play a game in London and they're trying to get to that point to play a game like you guys are going to play this week. That's a really delicious thing, and even more delicious than that, if I weren't on the receiving end of what that Bills locker room looked like the other day, I mean, and with the Kyle Williams story and all of that, I don't even know anybody in Buffalo that I'm even aware that I know other than Tyrod.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see that and you're like, that's what it's all about. I mean, I remember when we used to get that way around here about the playoffs, and it wasn't going to be that way even if they had held off on 4th and 12,
Well, a couple of points, and I always enjoy talking to you. The first coaches show I ever did was for Bruce Arians in the late 80s at Temple University when he got his first head coaching job.
Wow.
And Bruce and I have stayed friends for all these years.
What a great guy he is, huh?
And he's an absolutely wonderful man. And when he was standing up to do his retirement, and he said something like, I asked my wife, what do we have planned for next week? And he said, well, your son turns 40. And he goes, 40? Where the hell did that go? He started coaching 42 years ago. So his entire career, and now his kid's 40. Think what you miss. Think what we all miss because we dedicate ourselves to that. And you look up one day and your kid's 40 and you're 66 or 67, whatever he is. And Dean Pease kind of very much felt the same way.
Might be time to go on the Alaska cruise or the safari or to see Yosemite or like whatever,
something,
right? Yeah.
Something. I mean, We do what we can do during the off season or whatever, and it's they're paid very well. It's a great life, a lot of perks, et cetera, but you do miss so many things. Would you rather miss those things than be in the playoffs? Of course.
I remember talking to Cal Ripken late in his career. He had never been to Ocean City, Maryland. Well, why? Well, I mean, he was kind of busy during the summer.
Right.
Literally.
Right. So, but it's what I started with the Phillies in 1984. So it's been my entire life. It's been my entire adult life has been kind of on this schedule and on this. But then you sit in the film room with a coach and you look at what the difference Marcel Darius has made up front since he came from Buffalo in Week 8. And you look at this is how we defended, 70 power in Week 5. This is how we defend 70 power in Week 9. And you're like, whoa! And the fireworks go off, and it's fascinating and wonderful. And then you wait for that to happen in the game, so I can have that perfect replay and have that perfect soundbite ready to go. And that's what we sign up for. That's what you sign up for.
Larry Rosen joining us here. He is a senior producer down there with the Jacksonville Jaguars, longtime Rave TV voice, and still my friend doing it with the Jaguars down there. All of our programming here brought to you, and Larry's going to hate this, Costas Inn and our crab cakes up here because they ain't got them in Jacksonville. Fat crabs, cold beer, the legend continues. Go to CostasInn.com and see our friends there. Good enough for the Today Show and my mom and me and my high school Hall of Fame graduation ceremony. Costas Inn out there for you, as well as Lee Tessier and his team at Keller Williams American Premier Realty. List your home with Lee and you risk nothing. His team's going to get your house sold. Find him at Lee Tessier. That's TESSIER.com. Also, we are the voice of Coppin State University in basketball and the Juan Dixon Show, as well as D. Wayne Burrows. You can learn more about all of our programming that we're doing with Coppin State at CoppinStateSports.com. Larry Rosen joining us here from Jacksonville, where they've sold all the seats. They ripped the tarp off. They're going to play football. This this is the point where I want you to brag on the football team, Larry. So when did you join the Jaguars? What year was that? 2012, 13, 14, somewhere in there, right?
No, I did. In 14, I worked for the Ravens and the Jaguars simultaneously, whichever team was home, because the Jaguars had spent $60 million to build this incredible facility and the new boards and the world's largest, et cetera, et cetera. And they needed someone to tell them, I think that the Ravens were instrumental in helping place me with the ownership group here to bring in a guy that could really bring them into the 21st century. And I said it was really funny. I said, if I'm going to come there, I'm going to build this to host an AFC championship game. That's where we're going. We're not building this for 1 o'clock Sunday on October 13th. And they allowed me to really put facilities in place that could cover championship-level football. And 3 years later, we are a championship-level football team. If people haven't watched the Jags, you're going to watch because it's a playoff game. And I noted some of the, comparisons to our 2000 Ravens team or whatever. The corners are tremendous. The corners, McAllister, Starks, Boyer, Ramsey, the corners can shut down one-on-one. The outside rushes, the Peter Boulwares, Yannick Ngakoue, a Maryland kid that's just been tremendous. I mean, really has outplayed his draft position, all-pro level, has been outrageous. When they got Marcel Darius, that gave them the Saragusa. That gave them that guy in the middle that can two-gap and give you a chance to run defend and let your linebackers run free, which is why Ray's going to the Hall of Fame, because he was able to run free. There's some of that. So there's a lot of very, very good comparisons. If Bortles can game manage the way Dilfer game managed, the biggest difference between this team and that 2000 team is there's not a Hall of Famer at left tackle. So when Jamal, Edwin, and Jonathan would walk up to the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 1, they'd tell them, we're coming here, and you can't stop us. And that was an incredible thing to have in your back pocket, to have Jamal and those two guys on the left side. That's the biggest difference. Short yardages are a little bit of issues. But it's an entertaining team. There's no reason if they play their best football that they won't go deep and do some good things. And if you're a kind of Ravens fan that appreciates defense leading offense, real solid special teams, really, really strong corners, unique blitz packages, and all that kind of stuff, you'll like watching the Jaguars play.
Well, they've won a lot of drafts, right? And then they've won the offseason, spending money on Jackson and others, and have always been shopping it. And I know how much you like Gus. I think everybody liked Gus. This is really like Gus's group that never grew up under Gus, right? Like literally, the big change there has been everybody's a year older. The quarterback's a little better and a little bit more sure and has some more weaponry and maybe a little bit more protection and certainly a better overall defense. But, Gus is out and on to the victor go the spoils, right?
Yeah, and the defensive coordinator is Todd Wash. He will be a head coach. He's an understated guy from, he's not Rex Ryan, not going to have the flashiest quotes known to mankind, but is unbelievably solid, unbelievably substantial. And what they do is that they tackle, and it's like a Marvin defense that was based on speed. You run to the ball and you tackle, speed first. I remember Coach Billick at the Super Bowl looking at the Giants saying, they have no idea how fast we are. They just can't tell how fast we are. And if you watch it, Telvin Smith plays an undersized middle linebacker, but he's got 4.5 speed. He's a sideline-to-sideline guy, which gives your coordinator a lot of room. It'll be interesting. Telvin will probably spy Tyrod. And the one thing with Tyrod is he's quick. He's very fast, and he's a very, very good runner. So watching the matchup between the 50 Telvin Smith trying to, keep him in the pocket and not let Tyrod make plays with his legs will probably be the number one determining factor as to whether or not the Bills are able to move the football. But they're smart people. They're veteran people. Doug Marrone, I don't want any attention. Tom Coughlin. Interesting here, for instance, on the scoreboard, we could not do vote for blank for the Pro Bowl, vote for blank for the Pro Bowl. Tom Coughlin said, unless you're putting up 53 names, don't do it. There's no such thing as one guy, get in, because we wanted Yannick Ngakoue, the Maryland kid, to go to the Pro Bowl. A tremendous year. Just isn't well known enough to vote. And he's like, I love him too. He's great. But unless you put all 53 names up, you can't promote the Pro Bowl. And you know what, Coach? I agree with that. We're a football team. That it's not as great for the producer, if you will, but it's the way that you have to really work a locker room, and they've really bought into that.
A lot of pressure on Bortles here, right?
Yeah, pressure, the pressure came on August the 20th. He was benched in the third preseason game for Chad Henne. And they brought in Ryan Nassib off the Giants practice squad to compete to be the quarterback. And there was talk here like, what's going on? And it was a little bit of a look like You don't need to go win the football games. Most of his great stats were garbage time stats, and most of his bad plays were garbage time pick sixes. You're down by 3 scores. You force it in there, you lose by 4 scores. It's 31-3 in 2015. Who cares? So now, if this team has a lead and they're front running and he can play action because he's got a legitimate stud tailback, then he does his little rollouts, he does his naked bootlegs, he's good on shallow crossing routes. There's things he does very well if you don't tell him you have to go win the football game. And with the defense like this, and you get a little bit of a lead, and Blake doesn't have to win the football game on his own, the biggest thing, again, if you follow, they lost Allen Robinson, they lost Marquise Lee, they lost Alan Hearns, running receivers out there, Keelan Cole, Dede Westbrook, Jadon Mickens, guys you've never even heard of. 2 of them will be back for the playoff. You'll have Marquise Lee back, and you'll have Alan Hearns back. That may bring Blake more into play on some of the verticals and the stuff they like to do with those guys. Throws a really good back shoulder. That's his best ball. But now he's got a couple of veteran receivers coming back you haven't had for the last couple of weeks. And it'll be interesting to see how conservative they run, the play calling. They've been aggressive all year. They ran 4 fake punts. They've run fake field goals, reverses on kicks, nothing to lose kind of thing. And I think they'll kind of keep that attitude and swagger going for Sunday.
1 o'clock, it will be sort of like the world's largest cocktail party because the Bills fans will be showing up with keggers down there as well. Jaguars and the Bills. Larry Rosen, our dear friend, employee of the month and the year for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and my pal who I got to see you at Wembley. You saw me before the game. I was in a much better mood than after the game, Larry.
Well, I'm producing Super Bowl. The league has asked me to go to Minnesota if the Jaguars aren't in it and do Super Bowl. So I'll see you out there on Radio Row, if not before.
I would love to see you on Radio Row. Come put your feet up and hang out with us out in Bloomington. Hey, dude, it's going to be like 12 below. You ain't going to have anything else to do, I'm told that we never have to go outside. The hotel's connected to the malls, connected to the stadium. So supposedly you get there on Tuesday, you don't go outside until you go back to the airport. I'm down for that. Look for me at the pool, okay, or at the ice bar, or one or the other. Larry, always good to have you on, man. I hope you make it.
Thanks,
I pull for friends. So if you win, I feel good for you. If Tyrod wins, I guess I feel okay for him. You know what I don't feel good for? Me, because I'm a Ravens fan. So I don't care who wins at this point because we didn't win.
Exactly right. Stay that way. Never change, brother.
All right. See you later. Larry Rosen, my dear friend, senior executive producer for Video Things and Video Boards in Jacksonville. He's got a football game this week. We do not, but he's got rings from the Ravens here from his many, many years here with the Baltimore Ravens. And before that, with Prism and the Philadelphia folks up there. You can find me out in the Buy at Toyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. Never any commitment. 2018, your best year ahead at Planet Fitness. Last but never least, any breaking news that happens when the Orioles finally deal Manny Machado, you'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm worldwide. I'm nationwide. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.